Today, we're opening up a super practical travel itinerary. We're going to master English verbs of movement, pulling specifically from Unit 49 of the classic English Vocabulary in Use series. We'll break down the exact vocabulary you need to talk about your daily travels with absolute total confidence.
Here's the exact route for our explainer today. We'll start with the world in motion, then move on foot, figure out if we drive, ride, or take, hit up public transport and flights, and finally, we'll make sure you avoid those super common travel mistakes.
So, let's kick things off with our first stop, the world in motion, looking at your everyday journey.
But before we get behind the wheel of anything, let's talk about moving on foot, just starting with the absolute basics.
You see, language is absolutely best learned in real-world contexts. Vocabulary doesn't just live in a vacuum, right? It lives in your morning commute, your weekend trips, literally all the errands you run every single day. So before we even think about getting into a vehicle, we need to start with the foundational ways we just move our bodies. Just look at the energy here. We've got people walking at a steady clip, somebody jogging in a tracksuit, someone just leaping through the air, folks dancing, a swimmer doing the front crawl, a climber scaling a steep wall, and, well, on the far right, someone taking a pretty unfortunate tumble. It's basically a perfect visual inventory of our daily physical actions.
Let's really lock in these essential body verbs we pulled straight from our source material. We've got walk, run, jump, dance, swim, climb, and fall. Notice how active and vivid these all are. Now, you might walk to work, which is honestly highly recommended. Or you might run if you're running late. You might swim for exercise, or, dance at a party like Madeline did yesterday. And while climbing a mountain takes some serious skill, falling is the one verb here we usually just do by accident. So hopefully you won't fall on your way to work today.
All right, moving right along to the big question, do you drive, ride, or take? Let's navigate personal transport.
Now, this comparison is totally vital. It trips so many people up. You drive a car, a bus, or a train, but you ride a bicycle, a motorbike, or a horse. Why? Well, the general rule of thumb here is all about your physical position. If you're inside an enclosed cabin actually operating the machine, you drive it. If you sit on top of it or straddle it, you ride it. So sure, your uncle can drive a bus for 10 years, as our source material wonderfully points out, but you would always ride an elephant. You drive the car, you ride the horse. Keeping that visual distinction in your head will instantly clear up this super common grammar hurdle.
Next up, let's scale things up a bit and talk about public transport and flights, essentially catching a ride.
Just look at the vast array of transit options we have at our disposal. On the left, we've got the familiar daily commute. There's a bright yellow taxi, a really sleek motorbike, commuters waiting patiently at the platform, and a modern train rushing by. Then on the right, we scale up to a map plotting an airport route, a blue helicopter, and one of those classic red double-decker buses. The sheer amount of vocabulary you need to navigate these options is exactly why we need to be precise with our verbs.
So let's map the vocabulary right onto those visuals. The absolute primary rule as a passenger on public transit is to use the verb take. You take a bus, you take a train, you take a taxi, and you take the underground. Now, when it comes to the air, there's a really fun and specific distinction in our source material. As a passenger, you might take a plane, or you could say we flew there. But strictly speaking, it's the pilot who flies the plane. The pilot operates the whole thing. You just sit back, relax, and take the flight.
Okay, let's move into our final major section, avoiding common travel mistakes and dodging those pesky grammar pitfalls. So the absolutely crucial point here is this preposition pairing. It is such a common mistake to say you arrive to a place. And honestly, that's probably because we say we go to a place, right? But with the verb arrive, you've got to use at or in. You arrive in a large area, like a whole city or country. For example, the train arrived in Tokyo, but you arrive at a specific building or point, like the plane arriving at Heathrow Airport. You never, ever arrive to a place. Put a mental sticky note on that one for sure.
Now take a close look at this quote. I went through customs, but nobody checked my passport. The critical word here is checked. In a lot of other languages, the word for verifying documents sounds really similar to the English word control. And because of that, a ton of learners will say, nobody controlled my passport. But in English, officials do not control your passport, they check it. I mean, control almost implies they're steering it around with a little joystick or something. They're simply inspecting it, so they check it.
And here's another super frequent mix-up. Look at the correct usage here. Was the journey long? Compared to the incorrect version, was the travel long?
Basically, journey is used as a noun to describe one specific trip from point A to point B. Travel, on the other hand, is generally used as a verb or as an uncountable noun that describes the general overall activity of moving around the world. So when you're asking a friend about their specific flight or their train ride yesterday, always ask about their journey, not their travel.
All right, you've got the rules down, so it's time for a little interactive practice. Let's take all these rules, everything from body movements to vehicles to avoiding those traps, and actually apply them to solidify your new vocabulary.
Let's see how this builds up your conversational skills. Look at this chart mapping verbs right onto frequency. We've got walk paired with every day, ride a bike with once a week, take a taxi with once a year, and fly paired up with never. I actually want you to mentally map your own habits to these time frames right now. Do you drive a car every day? Maybe you take the underground once a week. Using this exact structure is a fantastic way to cement these verbs of movement right into your permanent memory.
Well, that officially brings us to the end of our itinerary today. But I want to leave you with this final thought to test everything we've just unpacked. How did you get to work today? And how often do you take a taxi? Really think about it, whether you drove, rode, walked, or took public transit. Keep actively practicing these verbs of movement, and I promise you'll find your English journey becoming so much smoother.